The Finding Purpose podcast is proudly brought to you by Relive the Moments, founded by visionary entrepreneur John Lim. We live in a world where it's easy to capture memories, but Relive the Moments makes it effortless to re-experience and share them. From NFC-enabled tap coasters and photo frames to interactive video cards, Relive the Moments turns everyday objects into unforgettable tap-to-experience keepsakes. Imagine gifting a wedding guest a coaster that instantly opens your highlight reel, or giving your event sponsors a custom frame that tells your story with just one tap. Whether you're celebrating a milestone, planning a wedding, honoring a legacy, or elevating a brand experience, Relive the Moments is the bridge between the past and present, between memory and connection. It's not just a product, it's an experience. Visit www.relivethemoments.com and use promo code PURPOSE for 25% off your first order. Let's bring your memories to life, one tap at a time.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Finding Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Adam Vora, and I'm so grateful to have you here. This podcast is all about exploring the journeys of incredible individuals, people who have faced adversity, found their purpose, and are now making an impact in their communities. But it's also about my journey. Over the years, I've faced my own obstacles, moments of doubt, and struggles with identity. Through it all, I found my purpose in giving back, creating a space where people can detach from the negative emotions and stigmas they may associate with their own stories, just like I did with mine. Here, we have real conversations about growth, resilience, and transformation. Whether you're searching for direction, striving for personal development, or simply looking for a place to feel seen and understood, this is for you. So if these conversations resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with us on social media. Now let's dive into today's episode. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Finding Purpose podcast. I'm Adam, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or watching on the official YouTube channel of the Finding Purpose podcast, thank you for being part of this community. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share. It's the best way to help us keep these conversations going. Over the past few weeks, we've explored all kinds of purpose through different lenses, from John Lim's journey of innovation and impact to Alan Collins' powerful story of recovery, grit, and service. Each conversation has reminded us that there are many paths to purpose, and none of them look the same. Today's guest is no exception. Daniel Sears is a visionary healer, performance coach, and the founder of Live Neurogenesis, a cutting-edge wellness company at the intersection of neuroscience, energy medicine, and longevity. A retired Air Force veteran turned holistic strategist, Daniel now works with elite athletes, entrepreneurs, and wellness leaders to help them unlock peak clarity, nervous system resilience, and deep inner vitality. Through a signature 3-stage longevity protocol, Daniel blends advanced neurofeedback, PEMF therapy, breath work, and energy healing to help clients recalibrate their bodies, regulate their systems, and lead with embodied power. His work is about so much more than performance. It's about building sustainable excellence from the inside out. Today, we'll talk about rewiring ambition without burnout, the future of human optimization, and what it really takes to feel powerful, grounded, and whole in a world that never stops pushing. Daniel, how you like that intro, bro?
It was a mouthful, man.
It was a lot. That was one of the longest ones, but I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
And bro, I just love every conversation that we get into, because I always, A, learn something from you, and B, you always shift the way that I look at things. And I think when you have conversations like that, that's someone I always want to keep in my circle. So I'm super grateful to have crossed paths with you. But there's also a lot about you that I don't know. Like, I kind of want to just start with your early journey. Obviously, thank you for your service as in the Air Force.
But let's jump into that, and then I really want to talk about what you do because I think it would benefit a lot of my listeners.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for that intro. Definitely a mouthful, kind of complex. I think that's what I'm really looking forward to with neurogenesis is simplifying the complexities of different things that are out there in the wellness, nervous system, healing, and so I'm grateful to be here, and I'm excited for this conversation. And so starting out, you said starting.
Who is Daniel? Who is Daniel Sears?
Man, Daniel is a multifaceted man at this point. I think I had a lot of facets before, but they were a little rough. A lot of experiences, a lot of journey. I started out as a kid growing up. My father left when I was about 3. That comes back into my story much later on. It didn't impact my childhood quite a bit, and then also not that much. So kudos to my mother for stepping in and the beauty and the magic that she brought. And fast forward from there, private Christian school till 6th grade. So that is a lot of my core, like understanding of spirituality and religion and the hierarchy of things where people go astray. And moved to live with my dad when I went to high school. So that was a big shift, leaving my mom, and went through a very difficult few years, but I thought it was normal. And then like looking back, I was dealing with a lot of things that I think were easy red flags at this point with what we know about kids and development and the brain and trauma and different things. And so fast forward from that, Air Force, I got through 4 years of high school, and I was looking at college, and I had this understanding deep in my bones that I was going to quite possibly party my way out of college and end up with a lot of debt and not a lot of education, not a lot of direction. And so I figured I did 4 years in high school. I could handle 4 years in the military minimum. So my dad was also in the Air Force. My stepfather was a Marine, or is a Marine, Semper Fi for him. And so I knew I could do 4 years. I could handle that. And then I knew I would have college paid for. I'd have a career, a skill, and some accountability, some, coming into my manhood. So I went from 4 years there and ended up staying. And I did almost 17 years in Air Force, and a lot of experiences, a lot of life lived through that. And when I got out, I retired, and I was trying to figure things out. I had went to school for business management. I had this little thing that I like to do, which was get a lot of education, but it was more tangible. It wasn't. I wanted to use it. I didn't really care about the diploma, so I would kind of change my degree plan or something. And so I ended up with that one actually 2 classes away from finishing the business management with a focus in leadership, and bailed on it. And there was a couple of reasons. Some moves were happening and some things in my life. And so when I moved to New York, I started going back to school, shifted all those credits over. I think 70 or so came into industrial organizational psychology degree. And so started that, executive coaching, trying to take my skills and my experience in life and what I've learned into bringing leaders more into their emotional intelligence. I realized that I had an out view, a perspective of the world that was very different than a lot of people, and the way thoughts came in and energy came into my body and system was like very different than those around me. And so here I am now. There's a lot more in between there, but it actually, I'll finish this, I'll wrap it. And when I was in that program, I was studying what was being done with psychedelics and psychology. And when I retired from the Air Force, I had a label of PTSD, generalized anxiety, and treatment-resistant depression. And so I was it was a lot to hold, to be identified. And so I was really curious what it all meant. I was always this very curious kid, boy, man, of how things worked on the back end. And I wanted to understand that. And the work with psychedelics, there was like amazing transformational work happening, and the numbers were staggering. The statistics were just incredible. And so I was writing about it, and I ended up in my own ketamine treatment. I had a guide, a psychedelic guide, a doctor. I had my therapist. I had a group of close friends that were really holding me in that time. And I ended up with 9 journeys in this treatment plan. And it was, from the first one, was one of the most transformational things of my entire life. And I'm putting this up against like the birth of my daughter. I'm putting this up against a divine intervention, which was like pivotal in my spiritual growth and working through some like really hard times in my life. So those are the types of things this is going up against, like coming back from like hitting rock bottom, something like that. And so this was of that same caliber in my experiences. And I was like, how do we do more of this?
Yeah.
What happened here? What was going on? And so then in my work with executives, I started to bring in tools that would bring us to the non-ordinary states of consciousness that some of these medicines can provide or leave in their trace, which is like the neuroplasticity. So that's kind of the theory or part of the theory of like what's behind my coaching and my work with neurogenesis. And what's behind it is that one of the most profound things that happened in that was a meeting of my heart. And so there's a fourth, I'll give you, most transformational thing where I met my heart, and it was a man that was apart from me. And then I observed it as well. And so that was really an incredible thing to have happen. And this was when I was going through some like really scary heart health issues, where I was going through heartbreak, or loss of relationship, loss of family, loss of my identity, my life, my career, my hometown, my everything. And I was heartbroken, and I was literally having physical manifestations of heart health going on. And so going to the doctors, getting that checked out, I was really conscious about, hey, we got to be able to heal ourselves in a very different way. And that's what everything's telling us at this point in time. And so actually, I think at A2B Con, when you interviewed me there, I said, when we tap into the frequency of the heart, all the data, all the science, all the things out there that are showing us what happens is the more and more that we do it, miraculous things just start to happen and unfold in front of us. And so that's where I want to take people, is more into the heart, and so they can do that and use these tools that have measurable things that impact and influence our mind and body to help us, to guide us. You know, they're like the canoe.
It's funny. Well, one of the things that you just said, and thank you for that, broad introduction, and God, it invited so many different questions from me.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned, though, was that there was a moment when you were able to understand that you think and feel and look think and feel differently, and there was a shift. Can you talk about that moment a lot? Because I think a lot of people experience that moment and don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Mine was rough and rocky and kind of a little sad, kind of pathetic at times. It was a journey, and actually that's what's why I want to pour this work into people as well, because like I had the midlife crisis, the one where it came with the loss, the grief, the pain, the heartbreak, the financial destruction, just like everything. And it was because I was ignoring things. And so like understanding that I saw the world differently was like slow and tedious and like methodical. And I actually had a teacher tell me one time that I was working with, and I learned a lot from this incredible soul, very connected woman, that said, sometimes God just gives people long ropes. And I was like, what's that? She's like, well, we're always asked to trust and hold on to our rope. And so when we're falling, we know that God or somebody, a higher power, universe has a hold of that rope and we're fine. That's what this like unhinged trust is, this belief, this knowingness is to continue to hold on to that rope. And she says, just sometimes, for whatever reason, some of us have longer ropes. And so the fall is longer and scarier. And so I take that into thinking about like how my process is really a story for people to learn from. And so one of the things I started to realize was that I was a highly sensitive person. And that happened when I had my daughter. And so a lot of my lessons are through my daughter, actually, which I think kids are more of a miracle than we could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say that, but I don't think a lot of people know what you're able to do with these like incredible little vessels because these relationships are always mirrors. And they're a mirror of your bones. You know, they're a mirror of like all the best parts. Children are a mirror of like your nervous system and like your insecurities and your unseen patterns. Like they really start to embody these things and you get to catch them and help them in these times to allow them to grow in the way that is going to be beneficial for them and what you can see for them. And usually those are the times that you yourself, or me talking about my experience, I didn't have somebody there to teach me that or to help me. And I had to learn a really hard lesson. So, but my daughter was young and was dealing with, she was labeled as a HSP, or they wanted to. My ex her mother wanted to label her with this sensory processing disorder. And I was like, I don't think she has a disorder. I think actually you have the disorder. And it's because you don't know how to help her in these times.
Do you think you were reactive in that moment because you were brought back to that moment when you were diagnosed with untreatable depression and you had all these labels that were thrown at you and you projected that onto her and you know how that felt, so you didn't want her to feel that way?
You're talking about when with her mother?
Well, I'm talking about, you're talking about all of a sudden the HSP gets thrown in the mix, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's an effort to put a label on your daughter. And you had already lived through that and worked through that in your own way when you were leaving the military. When you're having those conversations with your daughter's mother, did that come to the forefront of your mind at all, the feelings that might have brought on?
You know, I wish they did, because I that's where kind of the slow, tedious thing happened. You know, I was able to like identify where my daughter was when she was struggling with things and help her in like really beneficial ways. And I thought this was just like the nurturing parent of us. And then her mother just didn't have that skill or something. I wasn't really sure. I didn't have a lot of awareness at that time. But looking back, I see how a lot of my traumas not only like grew that situation into being more of what it was, I also did like prohibit some of her growth in that time by like saying, hey, why do you have to identify this? But it also did kind of help, I think, because it's like, let's identify, but not like prescribe now. Like, let's just allow her to be. And now we know how to like move with her and like just bring more safety into her instead of like coddling her or holding her in these like, I see it kind of like when you're going down a new highway and they got the trees on the side and there's two sticks next to them a lot of times with the ropes around them. And sometimes one of those sticks break and the tree might grow a little slanted, but if you catch it quick enough, you can put another stick up. And so that's kind of like the two parents there. And so there was a lot of times where she was broken and I was pulling really hard. And then other times where I was broken and she was pulling really hard. And so I think in that back and forth, we started to mold and recreate some more of our traumas instead of where in a whole relationship, you get to see those traumas and work through them together with the child or with, you know, the intimacy of the relationship, whatever the broken thing is. And we didn't have that ability in any of those times raising my daughter. So she was constantly being pulled in different directions with how to hold her in. And her mother didn't have a lot of experience and being more sensitive to some of these other things.
Yeah.
And my daughter definitely did. Like it was manifesting in her in like precarious ways, you know, like very peculiar. Peculiar. I was saying that word.
Peculiar. It's I can't say it. You know, you mentioned, you know, the word trauma a bunch of times. Obviously, in the work that you did, you had to do the work on yourself, and now you help others through their trauma. What do you think are the most harmful ways that you've witnessed others in addressing their trauma, and that a lot of people do almost instinctively that they could be doing differently?
How do people really mess it up when they're trying to help, kind of thing?
Well, kind of like, you know, like for me, you know, I had gone through trauma as a teenager, and then it was compounded by tremendous loss, the loss of my mother, the loss of my best friend, the suicide of my best friend. And the only way I knew how to address that and face that was when I discovered alcohol. I had already discovered alcohol after that first initial trauma, which was the discovery that me and my sister were adopted. And since that had been such a useful tool for that, any other traumatic issue that came up, usually grief related and loss related, I would use that substance Band-Aid to not feel and not face.
Yeah. Yeah, substance Band-Aids are abundant, very abundant. And some are tougher to get through than others, especially in this line of work that I've seen. And so awareness is like a ceiling also. And so like while we're called to have more awareness, we're called to have more understanding and compassion and love and patience and all these things. Awareness is the one that tells us if those things are happening and where our blind spots are. And but awareness like really does build a ceiling that's hard for people to break through. And so some of these things that people are doing that help to heal also create another ceiling for them to break through. And so like alcohol, you were healing through something with alcohol, right? You had these like this stress or these things, these rules, these boundaries up, and you wanted to drop them. You wanted to lose some inhibition. And so it helped you perfectly to treat those traumas. Now you can have sexual relationships that your body or your mind would probably keep you from. You would be able to act and feel certain ways that your systems would and patterns would keep you from. And so like the alcohol was doing a great thing for you, but it was also doing a terrible thing for you. You know, so it's like it's doing something. What it's doing is it's creating another line of thinking, right? And so it's shutting down certain systems and turning on other systems, or giving them a loudspeaker. And so psychedelics do the same thing. Meditation does the same thing. There's a lot of tools out there. And so sometimes people have like this great awareness, and shadow work actually does the same thing. So you start to find shadows of yourself, and you start to free them and love them and heal them. And so even the healing thing is like a double-edged sword. You're like, are we still healing? Are we still healing? And I've gotten caught in that too. So, I mean, it's always the balance. And so that's the one thing. It's like, where is the equilibrium, and what state is the grounding for that equilibrium?
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said there where, you know, alcohol was the solution for me until it wasn't. And there is always a ceiling to those temporary material solutions when that's what you're resorting to, because at the end of the day, they are exactly they're Band-Aids.
Yeah.
You put a Band-Aid on it and hope it heals, but at least it's covered.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think people do that a lot. And it's funny because I notice, especially now that I'm actually really making an effort to get to know people and meet them where they are, that there's a lot of folks wandering this planet where things look great on the outside, but then when you really have an in-depth conversation with them, there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of anger and there's an unhealed inner child that they haven't really looked in the mirror at. I'm a firm believer that the inner child work is the most valuable work. At least it was for me, facing that 13-year-old Adam in that moment, and facing, even before that, because I do think those monumental shifts that happen at an early age, we don't forget that. It dictates a lot of patterns growing up. So like I personally had to do that and go back to those moments, and I did sociometric training and EDMR and all the different types of therapy. And for me, I had to hit a spiritual, mental, and physical bottom in order to have the willingness to do that. Having worked with executives and top performers and really lifted the hood, are there any constants that you see that your clients have that you're like, okay, that are glaring after you have those initial consults, or even, maybe a few weeks into obviously working with you, or months?
Yeah. There definitely is. We all have this inner child. And some of us know what it looks like and what it feels like to like sit and really have a deep conversation with that inner child, and one where that inner child teaches us something very profound. And I think one of the biggest things is an unworthiness that somebody is left unfulfilled somewhere, and they start to. Another one is it starts at the base, which is attention, and our ability to hold attention, and where it lands in our mind or our body, and then what that sensation that creates. So people are striving for those sensations, and they lock in. Like we imprint on some things, and sometimes we imprint on these feel-good sensations, and then we're always chasing that again. And so it's how we hold attention. It's who we're getting attention from. Is this positive or negative attention? And so in that, underneath, there's three things that are at the core. There's control, comfort, and significance. And so control, do I have enough control? Do I have too much control? Am I not allowed to let go of control? Can I not let go of control? When I was a kid, did I have enough control? Did I have too much control? All those things around control. Ask the question probably 100 different ways. Significance. Am I significant? Do I feel significant? Am I worthy? Do I have worthiness? Am I feeling worthy? And what I'm doing, is somebody making me feel that? Am I really bringing significance and value into the world? And then comfort. Am I too used to being in comfort? Am I too used to being out of comfort? Is my baseline to be uncomfortable? Is my baseline to say, you got to be uncomfortable to get comfortable? Like, what are the sayings around comfort? Because there's some like really good things there for people to understand. And so in working with people, coming back to those three things and being able to ask it, I say in 7 different ways. Am I grounded? My grounding. Where's my grounding with comfort, control, and significance? Where's my pleasure, my ability to have joy and success and fun? My energy levels, my ego, my heart, my ability to love and accept myself and the others. My throat, my confidence to speak, my truth, my authenticity. Conveying a message, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, energetically, or with the nuances of how can you communicate, and your perspective and your connection to something else, if you have that, or to others. And so, like asking those 3 questions on all those different 7 levels, you're going to break down a lot of barriers. You're going to break down a lot of walls, and you're going to meet yourself in different places where that young child, I'll tell you for myself, my 3-year-old self, I'm about 7-year-old self, 5-year-old self, 7-year-old self, 12-year-old self, 15-year-old self. So like, I get to have that conversation with those kids. And then the same as the adults, they have kind of their rainbow, who they arch into, what parts of my life they affected the most.
Wow. It's funny because being able to so consciously identify those different versions of yourself and where you were in those 3 categories: control, comfort, and significance, requires a self-awareness that just has so many different layers to it. But, I think, you alluded to it in your intro, it also requires a really elevated level of emotional intelligence, I think, because you're also processing the emotions that you felt at those different stages in your life as well, real time, as a however-year-old man that you are. How old are you?
I'm 42.
You're 42. Okay, so as a 42-year-old man, or for me as a 39-year-old man, and it's hard because one of the things that I was able to do when I was doing that deep work was I did sociometric training with this doctor named Dr. Tion Dayton, and it was one of the most life-altering experiences for me because basically they put a bunch of pieces of papers on the floor, right, with numbers 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and they were all indicated ages. And I stood at the age of 13. And I stood on one side, and she was like, what would you say to your 13-year-old self? And, I was like, you think about it, and I'm like, everything's going to be okay. Because that's really probably all I wanted to hear. And then, as your 13-year-old self, what did you want to say? And for me, we were revisiting the moment that me and my sister confronted my parents about being adopted, right? And I got angry. I let out a lot of the anger that I probably should have let out there, that was the fire burning inside of me for 30 years. And, we went back and forth, and then we brought additional role players in, where, my dad in that moment, my mom in that moment. And it was this 40-minute conversation that I never had when I was 13. And, it really was transformational for me in that sense, because it was like, it was happening in real time. And, we revisited other parts of my journey, like, my mom on her deathbed and all these things. And it was like a life-altering, experience for me. But, I think that, obviously, I had already started some work to really mentally and emotionally prepare for that moment. But it was also now, having left that moment and feel like I had the closure that I never got, it's given me a different layer of not only emotional intelligence, but emotional regulation. I feel like now I'm really able to identify that as a major turning point, because I think life is a journey of turning points. And, lots of times, when I have guests here, I I'll directly ask them, like, what are some major turning points in your life that you can now identify that, impacted the trajectory of your life and either led you to a bottom or led you to a high. But regardless, for me now, I understand that so many of those moments had lasting impacts because of my inability to really regulate emotions.
Yeah. Wow. Incredible journey too, through being able to recreate those situations with people in those settings. Those are so powerful. I think a couple things have led to my unique awareness. One is being super energetically tuned. Now I'm attuned. I'm a Reiki master, a healer. I work with people's energy. Before I was unattuned, and I didn't know anything about it. I knew I had something, but I wasn't sure. Then I shut it down, had, whatever. But there's things there that a lot of people don't really understand. What am I feeling right now? And really being able to pinpoint it. And so I have a unique awareness. And then the military, I was always very curious about, like, they had it, like all the branches, they figured it out. It's like mind control. Let's break the psyche. Let's break the ego. Let's break the person. Let's mold them to something. Let's put it back together very strategically. I think where they went wrong, and we see now, is they put it back together the best they could for what they wanted us to do, not necessarily for what was needed for us to be able to hold everything together. That's why you see a lot of problems with veterans, because they've been cracked wide open and nobody put their Humpty Dumpty back together fully or the right way that would help them. It was just for the way that was needed. So there's a lot of awareness there. And then another level of awareness that I was able to gain and put it really into wisdom and skill and tangibility, which was I had 4 stepchildren in my second marriage, or 3 stepchildren, sorry, and my daughter, which was from a previous marriage. So married twice, learned a lot through those relationships, got to really mess things up, get sticky, mess them up again, try again. And I learned a lot. And then the other one, which was in my second marriage, I had the most wisdom in a lot of areas of my life, but I still had some big blind spots. And so I really corroded that in not knowing how to help somebody who is like deeply traumatized. But what I was great at, which was helping her children, because I loved them like my own. And I got a chance to mess it up with them. And, stepchildren are kind of the steps to being able to find your way into parenting, because I had a lot of years left to figure out parenting with my daughter. And then all of a sudden I'm like here with a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 5-year-old, like plug and play. I'm like, so I practiced a lot of parenting and mentorship and coaching, and I sucked at it. I messed it up. I got it wrong. I learned lessons, and then I started to get it right. And then I started to get it right again and get it better. And so I got a lot of chances to learn lessons about myself and heal parts of myself through them. And then as a performance coach, I was able to do the same thing with my clients. So the work that you did, I do very similar styles of work, and I pair neurofeedback in with it too. So it really plugs somebody into that deeper flow state so that they can then catapult forward into whatever we're going to be working on next. And we know that it's a connected place that we want to be connected. It's not from the fear mind. It's not from the busy mind or the anxious mind. It's from the connected mind, because we've done our mental push-ups. We've done our mental stretches. We've done those things. And so, but coming from there, I think, and I forget, how did you ended that with how you were, what was it again? You said when you ended what you said, you said.
I said that, like, walked away with that with a level of closure, but, I also understand that what it's helped me with is, not only the emotional intelligence part, but the emotional regulation part now.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I understand that a lot of the trauma was stemmed in my inability to regulate my emotions in those moments, or the knee-jerk reaction of just stocking it away, putting it in the back of the brain, and almost pretending that it wasn't there. And that's really very much a generational thing handed down by the parents who raised me, because that's kind of how they moved, and that's kind of, or particularly my dad, and that's kind of how I'm sure his father moved. Yeah. And it's funny because now that I've been actively working and building a really beautiful relationship with my father, and he's sharing these things about how his father used to be, and it's explaining so many of the things that he did when it came to us, and so many of the things that I adopted, that mainly really just bottling up emotions and stocking them away. But at the end of the day, I look at those bottled up emotions as a bottle of champagne corked. One day someone's going to pop that bottle and you're going to explode.
Yeah, I had a lot of opportunities to have these explosions, honestly. I ran hot. My treatment-resistant depression, per se, that's what somebody decided it was called, was just actually tension. And I found that and loosened it in a breath work maybe 3 years ago in my apartment, doing a breath work in front of a mirror, sitting Indian style on my yoga mat. And I took this
big ass yoga mat you got there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to.
I took this deep breath at the end of it, and I was looking at myself, and I was cockeyed, and I had this hinge in my back, and my hips weren't sitting straight, and I just took a deeper breath, a little bit deeper at the very end than I had ever taken in that time. And something loosened inside of me, and something that had not ever been loosened inside of me. In that moment, I was sprung back through this timeline. It was like, I'm probably 38, 39, I'm 39 years old, and I'm like 36, 32, 25, and then I hit these points, and then I'm like 18, 15, 7, 5, 3. And so what I was telling you before, I hit all those points just as a check mark, and I saw it down this timeline, and I saw myself as 3, tighten this muscle as I was sad. And so then I sprung right back forward, and this is in my visual field, as in this is coming through, and I sprung back forward, and I just saw those pieces of my life again, like a picture frame with like a digital art picture frame that I could see into, and then I came back into my body where I was, and I realized in that moment I had not released that tension that I was holding, that just released, since I was 3. And so, like, when you talk about generational trauma, and we've been holding on to things for a long time, that in that moment, I felt like I loosened up a bone, like a bone released, because it was so tight, it was so hard, it was part of my core. It was actually part of my core. And it was held so tightly for so long that it was probably as strong as a bone, you know? And so, like, we had these things that we're holding on to. And so, like, going back to how many opportunities I had to explode, it was kind of a thing. You're a military guy, let's tough man, let's get in fights, let's go, drinking. Like, it was great drinking. It was like a pro drinker. It was kind of the military thing too. It's like we'd go to the nearby college and outdrink all the frat guys and take over their beer pong tables and take the girls and go back to the club and have a good time and come back to our, like, we would do crazy stuff. And it was all this machoism. And so there was lots of times for the top to pop in those. And then same in the relationships, I was holding to all these different things, and I was just recreating all these broken relationships right in front of me, real time. And so I got a chance to pop my top a lot. And I always strengthened. And I thought I was just supposed to have this, like, really, really beautiful, like, race car motor that could handle whatever you threw at it. But even those are going to blow. And so it's really about relieving the pressure, relieving the steam, allowing emotions to flow through us, diving into what our goals are and where we're not aligning with those goals. We can look in the past if we want, but sometimes that just pulls up more past. It's fun to, like, spring back in the past when we're healing, so when we go forward, we can, like, call more of that in. And then when we meet something that's beautiful and a goal that helps us, like this, financial freedom, this success that feels good in my family, or, whatever it is, when I hit that healing point, then that's when I get to look in the past and say, wow, look at all the things I healed through to get this beautiful thing, have this beautiful moment, have this incredible relationship. And so I've had a lot of those moments in the past 3 years, particularly, where I was able to spring back in the past and see those in, like, really beautiful ways. And so I think when people are doing their healing, you said it's one of the double-edged swords, or, what's one of the bad ways that we can get caught up in. And one of the things is when people get caught in the healing game and they just want to keep healing, they want to keep going because they're finding all these things. And I had this one vision in one of my ketamine journeys where I was in this dark, spacey place, and I was on this land, and I had this, like, astronaut suit on or whatever. And when I was walking in, it was, like, grassy. And then there were these big holes that you could kind of, like, big trash cans, but you could, like, put your head in them, look down, and you could jump into them. And it was like this upside down world. And then I was told that these are all the parts of you. These are all the broken parts. You can choose to love them, heal them, fix them. You can dive into them and do whatever you want. And so then I looked up and I saw the whole entire place was just covered with them. I'm like, dang, I'm really an imperfect person. So then it's just like, as I started to go into them one by one, I saw different parts of myself, and then I was like, okay, there are parts of myself that I want to fix, but I love all of it, and I love the journey that I've been on, and I love the shadowy ways that these come out when they're done with love and with safety and vulnerability. Then in future, we're looking towards the future now with this. Then we can look back and we don't get caught in it. But if we want to, we can look down every single one of those holes and start fixing past things, and people get caught in that for a long time, healing. And I did the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so accurate, and I can speak for myself where, much of my journey, definitely, stemmed, rooted in my recovery journey, where you take this trip and you look at the past, but there are certain things you could change, and there's certain things that you just need to accept. And for me, acceptance was really the major turning point when, as corny as it sounds, like the Serenity Prayer is there for a reason. If you live by it, you're probably going to live a much more peaceful life, because accepting the things that you cannot change. Yeah. And I think so more often than not in the past, it was all about imposing my own will onto situations that didn't warrant me, situations that were really ego-driven. Mm-hmm. See if I was powerful enough to change an outcome or make someone feel different about something that I probably did. It was very much rooted in ego. And now, I don't really take that approach anymore. I'm pretty accepting of the things that come towards me, and I'm pretty good at identifying the things that are going to add value and worth, and pretty easy going about other things. But I also don't let those things that can be harmful get too close, because they're not going to add value. And it takes practice. It's not something that because it's not my default. My default is let's take everything on and be the big guy and show everybody how great I am. And so as I became more grounded in my spiritual journey and accepted the fact that I am not that almighty, then things came a lot easier for me. And for me, you alluded to your spiritual journey as well. And I'd love to talk more about that, because now that I prioritize staying grounded and as centered spiritually as I can, then, life actually has just become very, I don't want to say easy, but more manageable.
Yeah.
Quick break to shout out our sponsor, Relive the Moments. Founded by John Lim, they're redefining how we share memories. From tap-to-play photo frames to interactive coasters, they turn ordinary objects into powerful, shareable experiences. Perfect for weddings, events, or milestone moments. Relive, reconnect, reimagine. Check them out at www.relivethemoments.com. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I love this place. I love the state that we're in right now. We have a lot of wearables. We have a lot of technology. We have a lot of advancement in this technology. We have AI, which we were at A to B Con, and Punacha, CEO of the Deepak Chopra Foundation, said it on stage. He said, AI right now is, for us, equally the same as the invention of fire to humanity. And so, we're in this really interesting time where we have an exponential amount of technology and ability to use it, and then ability to understand it very quickly. And so this is where I say we have the woo-woo, which is the spiritual mumbo jumbo, the nonsense that we're not really sure about what it means or how to do it or anything like that. And then we have the demystified woo. So really we're in a state of woo, because the other woo has now been demystified. The Heart Math Institute's we can feel the heart. The heart's felt at a great distance away. Brainwaves are not that great. People are thinking things and they think it's inside their head. We're showing now with neurofeedback that your thoughts and your brainwave patterns are not necessarily inside your head. We're communicating with our thoughts. You and I are in this flow state. We're next to each other. We're communicating with our thoughts. We're in this thing that's happening, and it's coming out vocally and verbally, but it's also happening on so many other levels. And that, so we understand that now as humanity. We're able to measure it, and the Heart Math Institute says the heart can be felt 9 feet away. It can be measured, and so these measurements determine our connection with ourself also, and our ability to look deeper and go further. And so I say that to say we are here, this 3D level on planet Earth and touching the ground. And we have the sun, and it's somewhere. And there is something in between it. The wind, the clouds, the stars, there's no stars, but the atmosphere. And then above that, you have the stars and things. And so then we have layers to what we can see and what we can perceive. And then now we're showing that there are layers to the things that we can't see or perceive. And we use it. We've used internet signals. We use radio waves. We use quantum.
Cellular waves.
Yeah, cellular waves. We use these things, these vibrations, music, our voices are vibrations. And so now we're measuring those to like great accuracy, great depths, and putting values to them with wearables and with things that we can do to influence our mind, our body, and our health. And those are starting to show that there is spiritualness to what we're doing. There is an energy to what we're doing. And whether somebody wants to call that spiritual or an energy or whatever, it's something. It's spirituality or energy, or it's both. And it could be energetic from here to where we can reach or where we can perceive or push our energy. It's funny, I'm a Reiki guy, I'm like transferring energy. People are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm really just praying, and not to anybody but the highest form of you and yourself, and exalting you and allowing my body to be a channel for your energy to flow and some divine energy to flow back through, and it's just to be washed. I'm just a channel, a conduit, and I'm just holding that space. And so, but I've seen people that are like, oh, here's energy, and they swipe their hand across the flame and it goes out. It's like, yes, that's wind. That is the energy. So we do have the felt part of energy that we could do. You put your hand over your heart and you can feel the heat. If I put my hand over your heart, you can feel different heat. So energy is a real thing. We all use it. It's mitochondrial. It's the melanin. It's the light in our bodies. It's how we like move things with our mind, whether it's with our hand or something else, somebody else, whatever it is. So I love now that we're going further into all this, and we're showing that I think what's being shown is that spirituality like really does start to attract people too. You can you can start to create this like ambiance, this vibe, this frequency, and it attracts people.
Yeah, it's really attracting, because I think that when you're grounded in your spirit and you talk about the different energy, you have a calming energy. Mm-hmm. And when you're consciously working to stay as close to that spiritual middle as you can throughout a day. And I really track each spiritual journey on a daily basis. Like, how aligned with that spiritual center was I today? And there are going to be moments, whether it's, we still have life. There are going to be moments when you're at work and you jam hard left because you got an email that you didn't like, or you're in a conversation with a partner where it's not going your way and you jam hard right. But every day I navigate just always trying to get as close to that center as possible. And when I find myself veering off it, using the tools that I've been giving, whether it's breath work, whether it's meditation, whether it's reading, literature that has a powerful message, whether it's writing a gratitude list, whether it's praying, those are the tools that are provided to me to get me back to that spiritual center, because that's when I'm the best version of me. That's when my energy is attracting. That's when my energy can have a positive impact on others. And, and I think that's, something that takes practice. It's not something that, I was able to do overnight, but it's something that wasn't a priority of mine in the past. Mm-hmm. And when it's not a priority in my past, then I'm inviting all these different energies to control how I do, how I react, how I speak, and how I express myself. And, that's dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. I like to learn all my lessons the hard way.
Yeah, for real.
That was a saying that I went through like the vast majority of my life, saying as a joke. And man, I just made it all come true.
Yeah,
every turn, every corner. And so like, you ended with what you say is really important. And so when I realized, I'm like, why am I saying this?
Yeah.
I gotta quit calling these things in. So it's like, what we say is really important. And our vibe is like really a thing. It happens,
It's
like
such a thing.
It pulls people in. And so now we're measuring that, and we're saying there is actually a workout, a path that you can do, you can go down and start to understand where you are and where those things happen. And I'll tell you, one of the tools is like touching your body. I'll tell people, like you said, life happens, you're in an argument, you're trying to come back into that center. I'll tell guys that I'm working with to touch their body when they're talking to their partner all the time. Because a lot of times they're whining. And I don't know. And the voice is coming way up here. And if your hand is on your chest and you do that, you cannot feel your voice. And so you're not coming from your authority, your place of authority, your seat of authority. And if you want to like really get deep, then you're going to start talking from a place that is more rooted and grounded and makes more sense. It takes a little bit longer. It takes a little bit more from the body. It takes deeper breaths to pull in something real. And so I think when we're getting caught in times, we can just come right back into the body, and we'll find a little bit of that balance and that center, like you're talking about, when we're further away from it. And we'll change the way that our words reverberate through the air when we're communicating. And then we'll do something interesting as well. We'll feel some of the little nuances that our body is doing in these times, which is typically a reaction from those around you. Especially if you're in one of those tight situations with a very close partner, the two of you are in it. First, you feel where your voice is coming. Second, you're feeling what your body's telling, and it's telling you something. So that's your thought. And then third, you get to say, what is my body telling me about this other person? So sometimes I'll have like some stomach groans, and I'm like, damn, I'm really struggling with some of my ego in this conversation. I'll work through it and it'll still be there. And I'm like, this is actually my partner's ego. I'm not holding it. I'm not holding her in the right way. I'm not loving her unconditionally in this moment that she's feeling, and giving her the safety to nurture her ego in this moment. That's what my body's trying to tell me now. First it was my ego. Now it's my ego is not allowing me to hold her in a way that she needs to be able to move through this in a way that heals her. And so like I'll tell guys that will bring you back to your center. It will bring you back to your voice, your guide, just a different part of your mind. So, and then that changes your vibe too. Sometimes you can not even say anything, and you're doing that intuitively, and it's happening now in your partner. And so now you're in the trust thing. You're in this unconscious communication, which is what we already say. I think the numbers are not exact, but I'll say 60, 30, 10, 60% nonverbal, energetic, 30% tonality. We can change the way our talk and our mannerisms, and 10% words. And so sometimes in those moments, we're also really focusing on the words, which puts us right in the head. We're unconscious of our energy. We're unconscious of our tone. And we're unconscious of like what the majority of this message is being conveyed to the other person. And so that'll also tell us we're out of balance. We're out of that balance.
I love that. And I think this conversation has led up to a really good pivot to talk about Live Neurogenesis, because I think a lot of people, and I think I was one of them when I first saw what you did and first went on the website, and it was very techy, and knowing you as a person and the work that you and Michelle put forward to really, build this company, but this conversation is the foundation of what Live Neurogenesis stands upon. And I think the last Zoom call that me and you had, I said something along the lines to you where it's like the spiritual foundation beneath this tech company
Yeah.
rooted in, monitoring these energies and building that longevity with, tools as well, is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because it's unlike any other company where they're really just, buy this tool. But, when you're walking them through the usage and the reason and the why and what it will do, it's rooted in, spiritual calibration as well. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's been a real treat to do this. I brought Michelle in, Michelle Kazaza, and she's just been really incredible. I mean, she's a very tuned, talented person who brings so much to the table, so much wisdom, so much experience, and so we really got a chance to get some traction. And you're right, like this is performance driven, and there is a lot of tech. And so, like coming from the Air Force, I got a chance to see some interesting things on how we're using technology and how the government is like. And now, you see it every so often, things get declassified and you look back, you're like, oh man, I knew something was going on. And then it's there, and you're like, oh yeah.
Can you give an example of that?
You just talk about the psychedelic studies, like MK Ultra stuff. People are like, there's something here. And what it is, now there's a lot of information. And we have some of the best neuroscience around things now because of that work. Like we understood the mind, the body, the brain, the influence, how to, and so we also have some really bad things. I mean,
wait a second. Has the military been using psychedelics for a long ass time and now all of a sudden it's mainstream? Sorry. You heard it first, folks.
That's great. So, I'm just saying, I think that different government agencies has been using it in a very strategic way. And I think that there are some really incredible businessmen now. I think it was Tim Ferriss even said it on one of his podcasts. I remember hearing he didn't know a single billionaire that's not using ketamine strategically. It's because it's a really incredible medicine when it's used in the right way. And if people are just using psychedelics or ketamine in a club setting, you're not going to get the same thing that you are if you use it very strategically with a finely trained person who knows how to work energy and move in these realms. And it's going to be very different. So, but the military is using a lot of technology in really incredible ways. And actually, the Air Force has the Mind Gym, which is for some of the top fighter pilots in the world, and there's special forces teams that are using a lot of these different technologies that help to create more awareness. And there's nothing secret about the things that are there. There's public things. And so I am just bringing that into this business and saying there's some really powerful tools out there that really allow us to strengthen ourselves in ways that we didn't have to before. And so these are all I say they're kettlebells. And we know a guy from ACE, Pat, he's a kettlebell instructor. He could bring 2 kettlebells to your house and put you through the best full body workout that you ever been through. And he could do it with 1 kettlebell, I'm sure. And so these tools are kind of the same thing. It's like this neurofeedback, it's expansive, and you can do a lot of different things with your brain, and you can train your brain to figure out how to do those things and how to repeat them again and again. So that's a really powerful tool. And then we go from there into a lot of the other technology, and we'll say Live Neurogenesis. It's more about
it's Live Neurogenesis this whole time, not Live. Shit,
yeah, no worries.
I'm saying Live this whole time.
Yeah, everybody does. It's okay. It's that because Neurogenesis was already taken. So,
all right, Live.
These pieces of technology really help to tune the mind and the body, and it's really powerful to be able to use them and to be able to bring them to help us to be fully more in balance in this 3D world, as well as emotionally, electrically, chemically, health wise, and then also in this energetic or spiritual realm, whichever people want to play in. whether it's the wind or the angels, or maybe it's both. And then people are like really moving in this world in like a really powerful and beautiful way with a lot of deep consciousness that's also very spiritually connected. And I think that that's a really, really interesting place to be. And people are like having powerful moments. I mean, some of the psychedelic studies, I feel like some of the Johns Hopkins, it was like 86% ineffable experience. Like 86% of people were having powerful, ineffable experiences with something that they thought was divine. And that's like pretty interesting, when you start to say, oh, now we actually have an equation and to be able to repeat that process and keep tapping into that and see what you feel then. And so it's like people start to build up their power greater and greater. And I think what the beauty is when that happens, it's always tied to the heart. It's always tied to the heart. In the worldly ways, it could be tied to something else. People have financial success. They could have success with relationships. They could have success building something, like envisioning success. But when they start to really get this like power that attracts people in a beautiful way and makes things happen on a whole nother plane, it's always tied to the heart. And so it's just like a filter that we have for like this really beautiful, powerful energy.
Yeah, and I love that. And like you have a really like beautiful and powerful energy. And it's funny because it's something that I've always identified with you, and I didn't really know what it was at first. I think the first time I met you and you were really quiet. I was like, oh, he's just quiet. And then I met you a couple of times, and I don't think I was really, really grounded like as I try to be now spiritually. So sometimes when you are on a spiritual journey and you meet someone who's further along on that spiritual journey, it's somewhat intimidating. I think that was like the initial energy I was getting off of you, because and I also wasn't making an effort to really connect with you. It was more like, hello, I didn't really understand what you did. I didn't really make an effort to ask you what you did. And then, the more and more I've gotten to know you over really like the past 6 months, the more drawn I am to you because of that energy that you put out, and frankly, the breadth of knowledge that you have. Because, as I opened with, like, I learned something new from you every single time I sit down with you. And there's not many people I can say that about.
Thank you.
That really kind of wants me to make me pivot, because you have this company, you've had this beautiful journey, and that's gotten you to such a place, both spiritually, professionally as well. Where does purpose weave in? Because you've had all these different chapters where you had different purposes. So let's talk about purpose. This is right behind us on a big wall.
I love that. Yeah. Finding purpose. Yeah. We got to hit that. What do I think about purpose? Where does purpose come from? I think purpose can come from a lot of different places. And we're going to come back to those the 7 different ways of being that I talked about. Those are actually 7 chakras that are the energy centers that the body has. And so these are some Eastern energy modality type things that determine kind of how we are, right? And so if somebody's not very stable, they might have some faulty legs, some wobbly legs, some weak ankles. So I come back to those. And so I think purpose can come from all those different levels. And then there's going to be one that starts to trump the other ones, or there might be 2 that start to trump some other ones. And so like, I'll give you an example. My purpose is to open my heart to as many people as I can in a way for them to heal and see themselves, and or to see themselves and heal. And that's one of my purposes. My purpose also is to be an incredible father, be a really incredible father to my daughter, and unlock things in her. And my purpose is to enjoy the love of my life and this incredible woman that I am with now, Katya Libin, who just is the joy of so much of my day, my being, and my healing journey as well. And then I also have this like purpose to have fun, and so purpose comes from a lot of these different places, and sometimes we are in alignment with our purpose or not. And part of my purpose is to express these things. And so if I'm not communicating them like I am here now, or if I'm not doing the work, then I'm not living fully in my purpose, because these start to pull together in some way, shape, or form. And so I think when people are looking for their purpose, they have to start digging in to the bones and root parts of themselves, and then go use those as a diving board for what do I do now, and then what, or what happens, what does this mean? And then people start to find a little bit more of an elevated purpose. And so I think purpose is a really beautiful thing. People have tough times finding their purpose. And how did you find your purpose?
I found my purpose by doing that internal work and meeting my inner child. And I found my purpose by understanding that I am just a small, I'm a blip in the whole scheme of things. And when I invited God into my life, and when I invited the spirituality into my life, it was tantamount in depleting my ego, ego easing God out. And once I did that work, I understood that my purpose is to positively impact others. My purpose is to not leave a mark on the world, to impact the people who are receptive to the message that I am conveying. And when I was able to identify that, a lot of different avenues and opportunities to do so opened.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens, I think, when you're grounded in it.
Yeah.
So you kind of ended with this, but what advice would you give to someone on that journey of finding purpose?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. I think that there's a couple simple ways to think about a place on your body that holds a lot of power. And close your eyes and take a few deep breaths into that place. And then just start to ask the question and listen deeply. And just keep listening, because there's going to be a lot of noise that comes through, and then a layer will kind of fall away, and then you'll have another succession of like thoughts that come through, and there's going to be a little bit more profound. And you'll just, as long as you keep asking the question and keep listening and not accept any of those answers, you'll keep getting further into something. And I think when you continue to do that, you can start to find that maybe that purpose that's coming up is a part of your brokenness that's asking for you to do something different or to heal something. And so that's kind of what you're saying too, is finding that inner child. But it's really just to do that and find some spots on your body and like bring your attention to it and your breath to it and ask that question and just practice listening. Because sometimes at the end of that session, you might not get anything, or you might have got 1,000 things, or you might have got one thing. And then later the next day, you might have an epiphany about what that thing means. And that will drive your purpose. But it's the listening, the deep listening, the practice, and bringing your breath into your body is it's like the driver of it, the car. So that's how you that's how I think you get to hear more of what your body wants.
I agree. And early on in my journey, one of the things that I had to make a commitment to was speaking less and listening more. I think it goes a long way and also really listening and understanding that, when your ears are open, you're going to hear things that in a different way. Mm-hmm. It might be things that you already have heard before, but now you're looking at it from a different perspective. So that was a huge part, just, listening more, really taking things in, observing more, watching, the people who had the energy that I wanted to, emulate, gravitating towards them. Mm-hmm. Because, more often than not, and I tell people that I do think that the majority of people have that inner voice and that knows the difference between right and wrong, knows what's good and bad, knows what's grounded. And in the quest to, pursue that instant gratification, mm-hmm. they abandon that voice when it's the safe one. And it's the one that's going to nurture you and the one that's going to help you. So letting that voice, turning up the dial on that voice internally, really helped me a lot too. But I'm really, really grateful for you coming down, man. Like it was such a great way to end my week with this conversation. And I'd love for you to speak directly to my audience and share where they can reach you, share what you're working on, anything that you'd like to share with the audience.
Oh yeah, thanks. You can reach us at www.liveneurogenesis.com. I'm on Instagram at danielsears.co, and I'm excited to be of service to people who are looking to deepen, looking to maybe recover, perform more, do some deep healing. I'm really excited to continue this path with neurogenesis and as a personal coach, as a healer and a guide for the ones that want to go in a little further, a layer deeper, and really put that together for themselves. So I'm looking forward to that. And I just really appreciate this as well. It's been a lot of fun, and you got great energy. I feel your heart, and I appreciate you, Claudia. I feel your heart too, man. You guys are some powerful men here, and so I'm just and so many amazing people have sat in this seat before me, and so I just feel a lot of gratitude for being here and for being able to be the voice and to talk and express, and because I do a lot of listening as well. So it's nice to give and to be on the giving side. So hopefully it was helpful and impactful.
Thank you. And I'm sure it absolutely was. I mean, like for me, like I would say this has been one of like the most powerful experiences I've had here in this podcast studio. So I'm super grateful for you as well. And obviously, Claudio, grateful for you, man. Kaya Visions here in Stamford, Connecticut. If anybody is interested in content for their business, content for anything, launching their own podcast, feel free to reach out to me or Claudio, and we'd be happy to get you set up. For those of you who have been listening, I'm really grateful that you've made it thus far. And, I'd love for you to subscribe to the YouTube channel and, feel free to engage with any of the social media clips, because the more engagement, the more likes, the more shares, the more power this community is going to have that we are building. Grateful for everybody who listens on a weekly basis, and I'm hopeful that you are sharing this with your community, because there is a lot of value in the messages that we try to capture here at the Finding Purpose podcast. So thank you so much. So grateful. And till next time, folks. Thank you.